gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of an Evolved Review. I am your host, James Caleb Kitchens, and as always, I am joined right here from the Stovall Wrestling Network by Caleb Stovall. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's going on, man? Another day in paradise, right?
That's it. Another day in 2020, which is kind of the opposite of paradise,
Yeah.
right? So we kicked off. We just kicked off season two, so this is the first topic that we're going to cover in season two. And today we've got a pretty special list, man. We're gonna talk about our top five non WWE pay per views of all time. Um, we were originally going to do just a you know a top five pay per views of all time, right? But that's such an expansive list, and then when you start getting into WWE, if you're going to look at the whole of the WWE, I feel like there's just so much there. And it would be so hard to do a top five all around, all inclusive. So we're going to do this, and then later on in the season, we're going to do our top five WWE pay per views of all time, which I can't wait for.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. Because of this, I've watched so much wrestling, and well, it's nothing new for me, but but it's gonna be fun. I'm excited to talk about why we like these pay-per-views. And it doesn't just have to do with like the storylines and stuff that happened on the pay-per-view. It might have just been the feeling that we had watching it as kids.
Right? Yeah. I mean, we talked about the criteria for these. You start trying to think about, okay, what makes a great pay per view? A lot of it is the feeling you get watching it. It doesn't
Yeah.
always have to do with this pay per view had the best matches or the best segments or whatever. I mean, this is incredibly subjective. What you think is an amazing pay per view, what I think is an amazing pay per view, may be two different things. Maybe the way we felt when we first watched them. I
Yeah.
know for a lot of these on my list, I didn't really even have to go back and watch them because I just remembered them.
Right. And sometimes it's even watching it after the fact, like I've seen a lot of pay-per-views that I didn't get to see as a child cuz I you could back in the day you couldn't, just order pay-per-views like you can nowadays, like you can just get them whenever you want to basically. But back in the day it was a lot different. So, I didn't get to watch all of them. So, I had to go back and watch them and I'll go and I'll see like pay-per-views that I didn't see at the time, but watching it, I'm just like, wow, this is an awesome pay-per-view.
There are pay-per-views on my list that I only ever saw on a VHS tape.
Yeah.
I had to wait. I had to wait not only for the pay-per-view to air, but I had to wait for them to put it on VHS and then for it to be available at the Podunk movie store where I grew up. So,
Yep.
and this wasn't even a Blockbuster. We didn't have a Blockbuster. Blockbuster was too fancy for us. I remember we got a movie gallery and like everybody thought that, we had moved into the future. Imagine that.
Yeah, we had. I mean, I had them all. We had a movie gallery, Blockbuster, and oh, what was that other place? I think it was Hollywood Video or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah,
And there was another one too, Video Warehouse.
that was the one I was looking for. That was the one I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, so going down through these, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go back and forth and name our top five. As always, anytime we do a top whatever list, and if you're watching at home, yes, this is some brand new Marvel swag from T Turtle. Got that on a Black Friday special. I saw you guys eyeing it through the internet, or for those of you who are listening on Anchor or Spotify or Google Podcast, you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. So we're going to go through our top five. Like I said, as always, we have not discussed our answers with each other. So we may have some conflicting answers on our list. We may have, a few that we have the same pay per view. I have a feeling, though, when we did the top five matches of all time, we had Nate Pritchard of Suplexes and Microphones on. And I'm going to tell you that went really well for me as far as our match selections because I wanted us to all have different matches. And
Yeah.
we did. We didn't talk about it at all, and we had 15 unique matches. This I have probably a better feeling about. Now that I say that, we'll have like the same list. But Uh, when we say non WWE, we weren't including indies because that just would have been too ridiculous. And also, I think I would have been really biased in a lot of that. It would have been very hard for me to decide between, like a local indie show that I had a big part in, and then something I've seen on television. It's two separate things.
Of
So
course.
but we're talking Ring of Honor. We're talking NWA. We were originally going to have Bill Blanchard on, and there was some scheduling snafus, and he's of course from the Shootout with Bill Blanchard, which I recently did an episode on. Um, and he probably would have had some NWA goodness for us because him and Nate both are kind of NWA experts. They've seen a
Yeah,
lot more of it than we have. Definitely a lot more of it than I have. Um, and then so we've got Ring of Honor, NWA, TNA, WCW, and AEW was gonna kind of be the main ones. Um, you know, so if somebody had slipped some New Japan in there or something, I guess that's acceptable as well. But here we are. We're gonna kick it off. We're gonna kind of just talk about go back and forth. We're going to start at number five. We're going to talk about why it was an amazing pay per view for us, some of the highlights of some of the matches, just kind of you know, why we put it on this list. And keep in mind, this is our list, our personal list. If you've got a top five at home, feel free to send those in to us. We're definitely interested in what you've got to say, what your top five might be, or if you love our list or you hate our list and you think we have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, by all means, tell us that too. So, Caleb, man, you are the co-host. You get the very special honor of going first.
All right. Well, then I'm going to start it off with my number 5 pick, and that would be TNA Turning Point 2005. I bet you thought I was going to say 2008.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. I think you might find out in a minute why my eyes were widening the more you spoke, but uh, we'll see. Turning Point 2005.
Yes,
That's
turning.
that's an interesting pick, man. What made you pick Turning Point 2005?
So back then, when TNA was like first starting out, I remember they were still on FS1, and I believe they had just moved to Spike TV. I think they had just moved to Spike TV actually, so they were getting on Spike TV and everything like that. And I remember seeing the hype for this pay per view. And the first match that I saw advertised was Barbed Wire Massacre with Sabu and Abyss, and I thought, okay, that's going to be amazing right off the bat. It's a little ECW mixed with TNA, basically, and I was all for it. And the matchup was brutal. It was everything a barbed wire match should be, in my opinion. Great way to start off a unique pay per view. That's a unique way to start off, but it wasn't the main event or anything. So I was very much looking forward to what was to come in the show and everything. And you also had matches like Team 3D, Bubba Ray and Devon. Or as they were known as Brother Ray and Brother Devon in TNA, because we can't say those names because they're WWE,
Right.
against America's Most Wanted in a tables match.
Yeah.
So,
That I remember being incredibly excited for.
yes, yes, and I love the storyline going into it. I love the whole Team 3D funeral. I thought that was one of the funniest, most entertaining segments that I've ever seen in my life. It showed incredibly how hated and disgusted Jarrett and all them were, and Father James Mitchell. I don't know how he didn't just burst into flames going into a church.
Now, AMW, I think is one of those like forgotten like tag teams. Like
Yes,
everyone knows James Storm, right? Especially us. But like Chris Harris is like forgotten, you know. And what was this during the time? You have to refresh my memory on this. Was this during the time that Gail Kim was like their valet?
No, I
Okay.
think she came in a little bit afterwards. I think if I remember correctly, I don't remember seeing her in the fall. Actually, she might have been there. She might have been there. I don't know. I think she did come in though around that time, which was okay to me because I thought she fit perfect with them for a while, especially when they were a heel tag team and stuff like that. But I really like that matchup. And then one that really stood out to me was the X Division title. It was, of course, your favorite wrestler, Samoa Joe, versus AJ Styles. And AJ was the X Division champion going into this. And the reason that this match started off was actually because Joe attacked Daniels, who was a heel at the time. He beat him like to a bloody pulp, and they made this code of ethics in the X division. Like, it's like, hey, we're all about athleticism, we're all about taking competition to the next level, but you don't do that, you don't cross that line here in this division. And Joe did it, and he just said, I don't respect your code or anything like that. And so AJ actually challenged him, and they even bring that fact up in it. And how do you think this match went?
Yeah, I mean, I loved that angle. I remember that airing.
Yeah. Just an amazing angle. You also had little things all throughout the night. You had Raven and like Raven taking on Chris Canyon actually at the time, so that was a blast from the past. But
Who better than Canyon?
yep. um, and Larry Zabisco actually was he was playing the heel, like I guess kind of general manager type thing, or he just wanted Raven out of TNA basically. And so there was a little thing. Then there was like a little X Division showcase matchup, which I was okay after the barbed wire massacre. And then of course you had those, matches that we talked about. And then your main event, I know you're probably going to shit on the ending for it and everything like that, but it was Rhino versus Jeff Jarrett for the NWA championship. By the way, the Team 3D tables matchup was also for the NWA Tag Team Championship. So the Dudleys became the first team to hold the NWA, ECW, and WWE champion or tag team champions.
That's what I
Um,
remember from this event. I remember that. I remember the Sabu and Abyss match because they had great matches every time.
yeah.
And I remember the Christian Cage debut, which is the main
Yep.
reason I watched this because this was his first official match, if I recall correctly.
Yes, it was. It was against Monty Brown. And Monty Brown, people forget how good he was in TNA. I mean, he was great in TNA.
Whatever happened to Monty Brown?
He got out of the business for personal reasons.
Uh, the
Um,
pounds.
I know. Like he was so good in TNA. It was great. But yeah, you had Christian Cage versus Monty Brown, but then you had Rhino versus Jeff Jarrett as the main event. And dude, the main event was good. I mean, Jeff Jarrett, in my opinion, can put on great matches with people. You might not like him going over and everything, but hey, he was a heel at this point. So I mean, I was okay with it. So it was worse, I thought, when they tried to make him a face in DNA. That was when I was just like, yeah, that ain't gonna work. But
Agreed. Yeah, I mean they were kind of doing it because of his history with the company, you know.
yeah,
So
but
yeah,
I just like this because I thought this was a pay-per-view from front to back. This is a wrestling pay-per-view, in my opinion. You literally had everything you could want as a wrestling fan in this pay-per-view, in my opinion.
I agree. You had great sort of build ups to these matches. You had you had hardcore matches, you had gimmick matches, you had incredible athleticism in the Styles and Joe match, and then you had a main event that had two very recognizable faces in it, which is what they needed at the time.
Yep.
Um, yeah, man, that's a great pick.
Yeah,
That's a great
I
pick.
really liked it. So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you all go check it out.
Um, My number five. This is not going to surprise you at all. You might be surprised it's not higher on the list, maybe. And honestly, anybody who watched our top five matches of all time, will not be shocked by this either. My number 5 is WCW Halloween Havoc 1997. Um, this match, and I will go ahead and talk about the match that made it into my top 5 matches list. The Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero mask versus title match. Um, it I watched it when we did the top 5, and then I watched it again like yesterday. And that may be one of the greatest matches to ever take place on American soil. I cannot express how much I love that match. Um, Now the main event to this pay per view is actually complete dog shit. It was Hogan and Piper in a steel cage.
Yeah.
And no one remembers it at all. But Kurt Hennig versus Ric Flair was on this. Uh, Savage and DDP in their Las Vegas sudden death match, and a lot of people
Yeah.
have said that this was the last like truly stellar Randy Savage match. And say what you want about DDP, he's one of my all-time favorites, just because I idolized him as a child. Um, and him and Randy Savage to me always had incredible matches every
Hmm.
time. That's my favorite feud in WCW is their feud with each other. Um, there wasn't a lot. Jericho and I think Guido or somebody like that had a match on this pay per view, but
Jericho almost breaks his neck during a top rope Hurricane Rana.
yeah, yes he does. But yeah, the Savage and DDP match, and then the amazing Rey Mysterio Eddie Guerrero match, and I've always loved the just sort of aesthetic of Halloween Havoc. Those just made it for
Yeah.
me. The main event had a nice build to it, but unfortunately it didn't deliver. And it's not like Hogan and Piper ever had truly phenomenal matches anyway. And this was like both guys are, 10 years past their prime at this point. So, you know. But yeah, that's my number 5, man. Is Halloween Havoc '97. It's like the first thing that came to my mind when we started making this list.
I like that one. I do. I gotta throw a match out there that was on that you didn't mention that you might have remembered. Ultimo Dragon
And Sonny
versus
Ono. Yeah.
yes. Oh God, what was his name? Yuji Nagata.
Yeah, that's right. Ono was with them.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, Dragon and Yuji Nagata. I was like, that was a different kind of match, but I liked it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that pay per view though. That was plus. I love like you said, Halloween Havoc. I never understood why WWE out of all the pay-per-views never brought that back, and then they bring it for NXT randomly just to
Yeah.
spite Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, I mean, there might be as many bad matches as there are great matches on that pay per view because, like, Jacqueline versus Disco Inferno is on there.
Oh yeah,
And then Luger and Scott Hall. It's a snooze
yeah,
fest. But
yeah.
it is what it
I
is.
I give you that one.
Dude, Henning and Flair, though, that's I believe for the U.S. title, I mean, that's a clinic.
Well, yeah.
That's a clinic.
Anytime those two got in the ring together, that was a clinic. That was just here. People just shut up and let the maestros work.
And
You know.
they could do it either way. They could do Flair as a baby and Henning as a heel, and they could swap it.
Yep.
But oddly enough, Flair was a babyface for most of his WCW run. Especially
Oh yeah.
during the '90s, because the NWO were all the heels, and he wasn't about that shit. So
Yeah, and he would just get cheered so much that you couldn't make him a heel. Like every time they tried, it didn't matter. He was just way too over at that point.
yeah, I mean, it was like when he came to WWE. He'd do the strut, he'd kick you in the dick, and they'd cheer.
Yeah, even when he was with Triple H, who everyone despised at the time.
Yeah, exactly. He would hit you with that chop block, man, and still, that I think that's like a move that you just don't see enough anymore. No one does it. So I was always a fan of the Triple H. Where he would just sweep the knee with his leg.
Yeah,
Um, I was always a fan of that. But anyway, but that's my number 5.
nice, nice. I like it.
What do you got?
All right, so my number 4 is an ECW pay per view, and it is Hardcore Heaven 1999.
Okay, so
If you
before you go any further,
Yes.
I'm going to make an incredibly guilty proclamation here. I didn't even Fucking think about ECW. We were doing this. You were like ECW, and I was like, oh shit, they do exist. You were saying,
Well, I don't like everything ECW's ever done, but dude, they've had some of the best storylines in my opinion, and they have put on some really good pay-per-views. Not a lot, but I thought this one though has got to be one of my favorites, just because. All right, so it's Hardcore Heaven 1999, and the main event is actually supposed to be Taz, who was the ECW champion at the time, versus Chris Candido for the ECW championship. Well, that ends up happening a lot sooner than later. So, I don't know why this was made like this, but I'm kind of glad that it did, because it just made for an interesting pay per view. But Candido comes out to the ring. He comes out with Tammy Sitch, who was Sunny, which all I need to say is that name, and immediately, it's just a flash of hotness comes up. And she looks stunning as well in this. And Candido says that he has hired Bubba Ray and Devon, the Dudley boys, to watch his back or something like this during this main event. Well, then he challenges Taz and he says, I want it right now. So Taz obviously accepts. He comes in, he beats everybody up, and he beats Candido in seconds.
yeah,
And that looked like your main event. But then the Dudley boys attack him, and I believe they put him through a table or something like that, or they do a number on him. And so Bubba Ray takes him out and everything like that. That's the one that really takes him out, is Bubba Ray, which that will come, later on back. But then the Dudleys stay in the ring for a little bit, and they issue an open tag team challenge. And of course, Balls Mahoney and Spike Dudley come out. And, they have, I guess an ECW style tag team match where it's all over the place and everything like that. It was tremendous. I don't know. I love the way that they opened up. And this is a key point that I'm going to bring up in the match is Balls Mahoney does that fire thing to Joel Gertner. And that becomes crucial because all throughout the night, Gertner is going to pay the Dudleys to take out people. So they literally go through like the ECW locker room, and he's got like a hit list. And it has Jack Victory, New Jack was on there. Some other people were on there. I forget like who all was on there, but a bunch of people were on there. So they go throughout the night, and some of the skits that they do with them, because they're just like, Jack Victory's our boy, man. Like, what's Gertner got against him? And then they open up the envelope, and they're like, oh, this is $60,000 in here. Fuck that guy. I never liked him in the first place.
now
So
I know that you are going to bring up the crown jewel of this pay per view.
I will in a little while.
I'm itching for it.
Yes. But then there was Super Crazy versus Takamichi Oku. That was on there. That one was it was just a great, match and stuff like that. Very hard hitting. Then Little Guido versus Yoshishiri, or versus Tajiri, basically. They always
Right.
called him Yoshishiri, but Tajiri. And then you had Lance Storm versus Tommy Dreamer. And it was a hardcore match, and yeah, you had the women involved with Francine and Dawn Marie, which, ooh, good lord. That's all I can say. But then Taz or the Dudley boys have thrown out a challenge, and Taz said, all right, I'm going to accept your challenge, and I'll even put the ECW title on the line. So it's going to be Bubba Ray versus Taz later on in the night. So Taz beat Candido in a few seconds, and now he's got to actually defend the title against Bubba Ray, which they actually do have a hell of a match. And then Just Incredible comes out, and it's him versus Sid. And Sid does the thing. Jeff Jones brings out Sid, and Sid just wrecks everyone. It was amazing. I love that. And then, yes, the crown jewel of this pay per view. It is Jerry Lynn versus Rob Van Dam. And yeah, it's regarded as probably the greatest match in ECW history. And there is a reason. These two absolutely tear the house down. It's not even for the ECW championship, it is the television champion. And it's not even the main event. You know,
Right.
there's two other things. But I encourage everyone, if you want to see a unique ECW pay-per-view, in my opinion, this one is my top favorite. I know a lot of people say Heatwave 1998, and I did like that one, but not as much as I really like this one. I kind of like the twists and turns that they did, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Heatwave is that's a valid answer, but I like this one as well. This is actually I've seen probably 6 ECW pay-per-views in my life if we count the first and second one night stand that WWE did. So really four. And so this is one of them. And yeah, I mean, I originally watched it just to see the Van Dam and Jerry Lynn match because if you haven't seen that match and you love pro wrestling, you owe it to yourself to see that damn match.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of everything. It's got the pro wrestling and the high flying aspect of it in the match, but then it's also got, what ECW is, the violent nature of it. I really liked it. But I liked everything that happened from start to finish in this pay per view. I know everyone talks about this match with good reason, but it's like icing on a cake. Basically, it's like we have this incredible match, but the whole show is amazing as well.
Right.
So that's my number 4, ECW Hardcore Heaven 1999.
All right. This one is also not going to surprise you at all, I don't think. Unless maybe you're like, why isn't that higher on the list? My number 4 is WCW Starcade '97. Um, a legendary pay per view in its own right. This one, of course, opens up on fire with Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko. When Dean Malenko power bombs this man, you can feel it at home.
Yep, yep. The power
uh,
bomb, get out of him.
every time. But there's that one particular one in the match where Eddie like pops up to hit like a Rana or something like that, and Malenko just uses his momentum to just slam him into the mat, and you're like, he's dead.
Yeah,
The human body is not meant to endure that velocity with that level of stoppage. Um, and that's for the cruiserweight title. That was an amazing match. Um, there's a few other things on there like that aren't that great. They had like Randy Savage, Vincent, it's a freaking joke, and then Scott Norton against the NWO, which I believe was Ray Traylor and the Steiner brothers.
yeah.
Um, Goldberg and Steve McMichael, which
Whereas
thankfully that was a 6 minute match. It was 5 minutes too long. However, Perry Saturn versus Chris Benoit is on this in a Ravens rules match, which was fantastic. Um,
yes,
Bagwell and Luger is on this show, and honestly, I'm not a huge fan of either one of these guys, but they actually had a pretty good match.
right.
Um, Now, we get into the stuff that I really did like a whole lot, other than the two matches I mentioned before. DDP and Kurt Hennig for the U.S. Championship.
Yeah,
This is one of my favorite matches of all time. It did not make my top 5 list, admittedly, but me personally, this was a match that, like, as a kid, I remember watching this whole thing, and this is the match that stuck out to me. And I could watch this match every day. It's just a huge part of my childhood because it's when DDP beat Kurt Hennig and became the U.S. champion finally, and he had a legendary U.S. title run.
yeah, yeah. He really did.
Um, and this was also the point in time where Randy Orton says the whole out of nowhere thing, but DDP was really the the master of the diamond cutter. And this
Oh
was
yeah.
when he was coming up with a new, like, super creative way to hit it every match. So you always wanted to watch the match because you wanted to see how he was going to hit it. And this match has a very creative way for him to go into it as a finish. And the pop when he hits it is insane.
Yep.
I could hear it in my head anytime. Like, I can always visualize it. I can see him hit the cutter, and I can hear the pop.
Yeah.
Um, and then they had like an interesting little match with Zabisco and Bischoff, and even though this was not a stellar wrestling match, the whole idea here was, um,
Story
that
behind it.
yeah, the story behind it was really good, and basically it was for control of Nitro.
Yeah.
And so uh, that's kind of how it ended up going. Bischoff uses the steel plate under the shirt. Bret Hart was a special guest referee. Um, and yeah, I mean that's just it was an interesting kind of like segment and a end to a storyline that they had been running. Um, and
Yeah.
and then of course the main event. This is probably one of the best Hogan matches ever to me. The finish was but this was the culmination of the longest running storyline that WCW ever ran, which was
Yeah.
Sting versus the NWO. And Sting's entrance in this match is one of the best entrances in the history of pro wrestling, if not the best.
I would venture to say it's the best in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely in the conversation. And so, the finish was wonky because you had like Nick Patrick, and they did the whole thing where they came out and drew the name for who was going to be the referee, and it was Nick Patrick, and everybody's like, "Oh shit!" And then, of course, you knew he was going to cheat. He does the fast count. I remember watching this with my dad as a child, and my dad was a Hulk Hogan fan, and even when he turned heel and became Hollywood Hogan, it's like, fuck that. This is my like hero. I still like him. And I was, behind Sting in this, and my dad's like, Hogan won this match, and he's like, it was 1, 2, 3. You saw it, And the
Yeah.
problem was that the problem that made it screwy, it would have worked better, but the count's not that fast.
No,
It's
no, he
not.
timed it really slow.
Yeah, it's not like Nick Patrick's like 1, 2, 3, and that they did it. He's like 1, 2, 3, and it's like it's a little fast. I guess if you're a referee and you know how the count's supposed to go, it was fast to him. But to the viewers at home, it wasn't that fast. And
No.
so it was really kind of like people were like, "What the fuck?" Uh, but I still love it. I mean, even though that ending was weird, um, I still love this. And I as a kid, it was my favorite pay per view. I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, we still got the satisfaction of Sting walking out with the title and seeing everyone celebrate in the end and everything like that, and that was cool. And I would like to bring up, how about the intro to the pay-per-view with
Yes.
Sting, like in the like literally looking like the Crow. I still think that is the coolest intro I've ever seen to a pay-per-view.
And they did like the lightning, and then he was in like different spots on the screen,
Yeah.
or they would have it black, and the lightning would hit, and it would illuminate Sting, and then when the lightning was gone, he would be gone.
Yeah,
Um,
like it was amazing. I gotta say something about this pay-per-view.
yeah,
Um, it did not make my top things, and that's surprising. But what I truly remember about this pay-per-view is I realized that this pay-per-view was going to be on not a school night as a child. This was in December, and we didn't have school then. And I like begged my dad. I said, Dad, come on, you know it. You love Sting. Sting is your favorite as well. Like, we have to watch this. And he just goes, all right, come on. So I got to watch that in its entirety live, and I absolutely loved it.
yeah. I mean, it's like we talk a lot about like wrestling is about making moments,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole like all the baby faces coming out to celebrate the win. How many times has that been done in wrestling since? You
Yeah.
know, And then I also love the like them scrubbing the NWO off the belt, and then they painted WCW on Hogan's back, and I mean it was this incredible culmination
Yes.
to really 2 years worth almost of a storyline they were running. I mean, if you wanna count like the NWO like starting kind of up into all of this, the feud with Sting and everything, and yeah, I mean, it was just an awesome ending to a great angle, and this one has some great matches on it, just like my number five. It has some not great matches on it, but once again, it's about those moments that exist in this pay per view, and the stellar standout matches in this event are absolutely just on another level for me.
Yeah, I agree. I really loved it, and especially loved seeing that setting over and over again when I played WCW Revenge.
Yes, yes. Well, that's my number four, man. Take it away.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go finally with the WCW pay per view though, as my number three. It would be WCW Uncensored 1997. Uh,
Okay.
Yes, because I went back and I watched this, in later form and everything like that. Basically, courtesy of the WWE Network, and it starts off with one of the best matches you'll see. Actually, surprisingly, the one that opens up Starcade 1997. It starts up with Dean Malenko versus Eddie Guerrero, but it's a no disqualification match,
Yep.
and it is tremendous because they're bending the rules and everything like that. Six gets involved in the matchup as well. It's for the U.S. title. So it was a great way to kick off the pay-per-view. Obviously, I mean, just pretty much how else did they kick off pay-per-views basically?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people would, they would come there for the main event, but when they would put the cruiserweights on, like people were hooked to that. It was a great way to get the crowd into the show.
I agree. Like it was a great way to kick off the pay per view. So I loved it, and I loved Dean Malenko goes over, and he actually has a camera because Six is brings down a camera quarter to the ring and stuff like that. So he has the camera and he hits Eddie Guerrero with it, and then like as Eddie is laying there, he like films it basically like at the end of it. So I love that. I love the interview with Rowdy Piper at this point because he just goes off on his Piper interviews, and I love his interviews. Like he's talking about the Four Horsemen because he's involved in the main event, which is the main event's not that great, and I'll get to that later on. But it's basically the Four Horsemen with Roddy Piper in their corner versus Team WCW versus Team NWO, and it's like a battle royale slash pinfall submission thing. And that's really hard to describe, and I'll talk more about that later. But I love his interview because he's just like, oh, the horsemen. Well, that's funny. Do they ride mares or are they ponies or whatnot? Like he just and he even does this. He's like, oh, the four horsemen there. So you got the four. What about that one?
Yeah.
Like puts this one finger salute up and everything. It's great. And Gene Oakland in the thing as well. Ric Flair though is not there, so that's what sucks about it. But
And Steve
you know,
McMichael was in there.
well, yeah, it's needless to say.
The
Then you
wor-
had
the worst horseman of all time by like 1,000 miles.
this is true. This is very true. Then you had Psychosis versus Ultimo Dragon. That was a great match. Not many people were really in tune with it. So that kind of sucks, but it was a good wrestling matchup. And then you had a great segment between Macho Man and DDP, where DDP comes out, and this is where he hasn't fully turned face, but he's definitely about to turn face after this, particular segment. And Savage, comes out. He's like, brother, I had you all wrong. You're the man. and he talks about Kimberly, being in I think it was Playboy at the time. It was either it was one of those like kind of nude magazines back in the day, and they had actually spray painted her like in her dress, like they had spray painted her NWO, and then Macho Man comes up and attacks him from behind and stuff like that. It's just good storytelling, in my opinion, and it kicked off that amazing rivalry that they would go on to have. The
Yeah, I mean
next two,
the story there was always that like DDP just could not beat him. It was like no matter what, DDP couldn't beat him, and that was a great like way to make him look like the underdog, still make Savage look like the established veteran, and then when Page finally does go over on him, the pop is enormous.
yes, yes, it was. And I remember when he did go over on him. It was Spring Stampede 1997, and that's probably my favorite match that they had of all of them. I mean, they had amazing matches. Don't get me wrong, but that one was my favorite just because I love the pop at the end.
Yeah, they beat the ever loving shit out of each other in that match too. Those punches were like all real.
Yeah. The next two matches, not so much. Mortis versus Glacier in a karate match. Not the best idea. I get that. And Buff Bagwell versus Scotty Riggs in a strap match. Yeah, not very good. The next match though was a tag team match between Harlem Heat and Public Enemy. Now, it's not the best hardcore match or no disqualification match or whatnot, but the commentary on this thing is some of the funniest shit I have ever seen between Bobby Heenan and Dusty Rhodes. Because, like, there's one time where Stevie Ray takes a trash can and just whacks. No, I'm sorry. It was Johnny Grunge takes the trash can and he just whacks Stevie Ray over the head with, and Dusty Rhodes busts out laughing, which then in turn makes Heenan bust out laughing, and they're just cracking jokes the whole time. And you could tell they're just having so much fun at this point. Like they're just like, this is great. This is just so much fun, and it makes the matchup just so much more entertaining. I loved every single second of it. And then you had Rey Mysterio versus Prince Iaukea for the TV title. I just like Rey Mysterio. I would have preferred this be Steven Regal versus Rey Mysterio, which is what it was originally scheduled to be advertised as. And I would have liked it where Ray would have gone over on Regal and beaten him for the TV title. That's how I would have booked it. But
I liked this match though. I
I
I
did,
uh I, I remember seeing it as a kid.
I did like this match. I did. I don't mind it, but I think it would have been better for Ray had it been Steven Regal and he beats Regal or something like that for the TV title. So that's just me. Also in this, we have in the main event, it's supposed to be Team WCW, Luger the Giant, and the Steiner brothers. However, earlier in the night, the NWO attacked Scott Steiner, obviously, lay him out, and now Team WCW is down a man. So,
I thought they
so
attacked Rick. Am I remembering that wrong?
did I say Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, they did. They attacked Rick Steiner. Yes,
I'll
they
say
did.
you're the
That me-
expert, man. If you tell me it was Scott, I believe you. You watch way more wrestling than anyone.
No, I did. I did actually just now realize that. Yeah, I thought I said Rick Steiner, but I said Scott Steiner. So that was my fault. But Team Piper versus Team NWO versus Team WCW. I'm not going to try to explain this matchup, but the stipulation is basically if Team Piper wins, he gets Hogan in a cage. If Team WCW wins, I believe the NWO is suspended for 90 days. And then if Team NWO wins, they get to challenge for any WCW title on any event that they choose see fitting. So, like, if they wanted to challenge for the TV title the very next night on Monday Nitro, they can. They can just do it. Then they can sub whoever they want in. So, long story short, that matchup's very confusing. But the great parts that come in this matchup are when Luger goes on a tangent at the very end and literally almost eliminates everybody. And then Dennis Rodman comes in and helps Hogan against Luger and stops Luger's momentum. But the crowd was going insane for it and everything like that. I love that part about it. The Team NWO wins, but that's not the story. The story happens right after this matchup as Sting repels down from the rafters. And this was when, like, who are you playing for, Sting? Who are you playing for? And everyone's going nuts for a minute. Then they're like, all right, what's about to happen? Scott Hall gets in the ring. He takes that bat. He hits Scott Hall. That place fucking erupted.
Yes.
They went absolutely ape shit. And I watched it and I was just like, oh, this is good stuff. This is incredible. Every time I see him rappel down and I see him hit Scott Hall with the bat, like I get chills every single time. It's so well done. It is amazing. And then after he takes out Hall, he takes out Nash, and he takes out Savage, he turns and he points to Hogan. And I'm thinking, all right, the pay-per-view feed's about to cut. There, this is where they tease it, or Hogan's about to run away. Instead, Hogan actually gets in the ring and all he does is block him and he punches him. The crowd goes even wilder. And then he hits the Scorpion Death Drop. And Tony Schiavone's calling of this, Bobby Heenan and Dusty Rhodes going nuts for it, dude. That was an amazing way to end the pay-per-view, in my opinion. So that is my third favorite pay-per-view, and it's the WCW pay-per-view, WCW Uncensored 1997.
That's a good one, man. And that you're exactly right. That moment at the end with Sting just kind of caps it all off. And one thing I will note before I go on, it's easy to go back and watch the segments that had Rodman in them, or Carl Malone, and kind of not really be able to grasp the I guess the momentum and the spectacle that came along with these, because at this point in time, man, like, this is Dennis Rodman. This is like during like the Jordan era Bulls, right? The Chicago Bulls were some of the most famous people on earth,
Yeah.
you know. And yeah, I mean, this is during that era. So Dennis Rodman showing up, I mean, it would be like if LeBron James like walked out, today on like Dynamite or something, it was a huge thing. It was a huge thing. Um,
Yeah, it was. Dennis Rodman at one point was one of the biggest celebrities,
yeah,
definitely sports celebrities.
yeah, especially with his personality in general, he was a perfect fit for pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Um, so I will tell you, my number three and my number one, and that's weird. You would think it'd be one and two, or two and
Yeah.
three, but my three and my number one, I changed them like six times today. And then right as we started recording, I changed them again. And so that's what I went with. I'm locked in. No changing it after the recording starts. So my there's no more WCW on this list, by the way. Just a little mild tease there. Um, so my number three is TNA Unbreakable 2005.
Really? I just like the one match.
No, I actually went back and watched this one because I was like, do I think that this is good enough to go on the list? And originally I was going to put it on there because of that match. But there's some great matches on here. Austin Aries and Roderick Strong uh is fantastic. Chris Sabin and Petey Williams. I love Chris Sabin. I don't know if we've never actually had this discussion. I'm a huge Chris Sabin fan.
Mhm.
Abyss and Sabu had one of their no DQ matches on this event. Bobby Roode and Jeff Hardy was good. This is before Jeff Hardy was, he was on drugs, but he was performing well on drugs. Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
He's always on drugs.
if we want to be honest, pretty much all. If you've ever loved Jeff Hardy, he was probably on drugs at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and then we had the Naturals, which was Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens, and they were up against uh, AMW and Johnny. Was it? It wasn't Chris Candido, right? It was Johnny Candido.
No, it was Chris Candido.
Was it? Okay.
Or wait,
Either way, it doesn't matter. I don't want to spend too
no,
much time on it.
Johnny. I can't remember what his name was. Johnny Swinger.
Was it him? I know he was teamed with Alex Shelley, and then it was A1 and Eric Young for Team Canada.
Johnny Swinger was with Alex Shelley.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, that being said, uh, yeah, I mean, it was this was a great match too. That was an elimination tag for the NWA tag team titles. Um, Raven had a Ravens rules match with Rhino. I wasn't a huge fan of that, but once again, this was during that time where TNA really wanted to, um, solidify themselves as having these like former WWE and WCW guys that were mainstays.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that was on this pay per view is the Three Live Crew versus the team that was calling themselves the Diamonds in the Rough, which was David Young, Elix Skipper, and Simon Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, I mean that was obviously a pretty good match as well. Um, we are familiar with David Young a little bit. All right, do you know that connection? Are you aware of that? Have we talked about that?
What?
About who we know that's related to David Young.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Uh,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And then yeah. So yeah. I mean I going back and watching through this whole pay per view, I was like, this has to make it on the list, and I was so close to putting it number one because the main event is on my top five matches list. It's AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe. This was one of the only times, I know it was the first time that the X Division Championship was the main event, and it may have been the only time. I'm not sure, but I know it was the first time for the pay per view. And
Oh,
I mean,
oh, yeah, yeah, it was. It was the very first time the X Division Championship was the headline.
yeah, and I mean this match was, it was everything. It delivers. I could watch this match every day. It delivers start to finish. You've got Joe and Daniels both playing heel. You have Joe playing the monster heel. You have Christopher Daniels playing the antagonist heel, where and he's basically he is playing the role of, I don't want to be involved with either one of these guys. So he's trying to play the smart heel. He's trying to take advantage of everyone. And then you have Styles. Styles, I said this before, Styles is the worst thing in this match. How good is your match got to be if AJ Styles is the worst thing in it? That's just not it. That's just, I can't fathom it. It's I just can't. um, and yeah, I mean that all three of these guys just absolutely deliver here. I have ranted about this match and how good it is for so much on this program. I don't need to do it again. But that's my number three, Unbreakable 2005. I just, once again, like I said, the and this is the thing that put it at three and not one, is there are some just straight up boring matches on this pay per view,
Hmm.
and I did not think it could deserve the number one spot, man. But I mean, we talk about moments, right? And just that main event it's just, it's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to
that was
compete with it.
amazing.
Yeah. All right, we're getting into the top two here, so I'm interested to know, what is your number two?
My number two is TNA Victory Road 2004, their very first official 3-hour pay per view.
I considered this one because
Yep.
I watched it live.
And it was amazing because, to me, I remember watching this back at the time, and I did watch it live. somehow I was able to watch it live. And I don't even think I watched it live. I think I watched it like the day after or something like that, or someone gave me a tape of it. I can't remember exactly, but it was their very first official 3-hour pay-per-view. And I was so excited for it because at the time they were like there wasn't an AEW, there wasn't a big boom on the independent scenes and everything like that. There was excuse me, there was nothing out there. You might have had Ring of Honor, but I didn't even know about Ring of Honor at the time. So TNA was it. And I thought, okay, they're fixing to skyrocket, which they kind of did for a number of years after this.
I know
Um,
Jeff Hardy was the big draw, man. I know a lot of people went over there for Jeff Hardy.
Yeah, they really did. And it's in his matchup, a ladder matchup against Jeff Jarrett and everything for the championship. Now, just like the Turning Point 2006 pay-per-view that I put there, um, I don't think Jeff Jarrett, always had the best main events or anything. I thought that he had, really good main events and everything like that. I just like the fact that it was an actual main event
Yeah.
to a show. It was a one-on-one, whether or not it was a ladder matchup or like Rhino versus Jeff Jarrett. It was an actual wrestling match. And I was like, I like that. I don't like, a big, like a big time gimmick match to be the main event where you have like several different people. It's like, no, I just give me one, give me the title, give me the NWA title at the time. And so that's what I liked about it. But then you also had the best way to open up the pay-per-view, which was that X Division gauntlet matchup, which was basically an X Division Royal Rumble style match. And it was amazing because you got to see everybody do their stuff in the X Division. That was incredible. And then, of course, you had the very first Monsters Ball match with Raven, Abyss, and Monty Brown. And that was, the violence went to another level at that point.
That was great. And it's I want to note here that this was about the time where people started to get disgruntled with WWE.
Yes.
Nowhere near to the point it is now, but this is the beginning of the Cena era.
Yeah.
So this is where he wasn't quite being shoved down everyone's throats yet, but this is where you had this trajectory where Cena and Batista were like the main guys, and if you weren't into either one of those guys, you might as well not watch Raw or SmackDown.
Well, and it wasn't just that. It was also, just WWE as a whole. It was all the same thing. It was just, it was like, oh, I want there to be another
Right.
promotion like there was. Like I miss WCW. I think when WCW first went away, everyone kind of was like, yay, they bought it or anything like that. And, everyone just kind of thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. But then, like, as I think like a year or two settled in, everyone realized, oh shit, there's nothing else besides WWE. Like, why are they the only place that you can go to do this?
Yeah.
And it just wasn't right.
Well,
So this was the time when TNA was starting to make that launch.
yeah, and that's a great point because it, the thing about it, you've got WCW, right? They get bought by WWE, and everyone's excited, not because WCW is going out of business, although WCW had gotten pretty rough in
Yeah.
those final days. But yeah, thanks Russo. But people were excited about seeing the versus matches between the two companies. People were excited about seeing all these great crossovers. I mean, it'd be like if Marvel bought DC. You don't want DC to go out of business, but you want to see Batman fighting Wolverine or whatever. So
Yeah.
we were excited for the possibilities. The invasion angle ran for so long with ECW and WCW.
But it
And
was absolutely terrible.
what was
The ECW WCW invasion angle. It was awful. I did not care about any of the matches that they actually presented. It
yeah
was like And then all you had was, you know, you had Stone Cold go to the Alliance side, and I'm sitting there just like, oh my god, they've got to pull from WWE to help them fight WWE. Like
The
it's not good.
the two things that were really good about that was the vignettes we got with Austin and Angle, and then The Rock and Booker T for the
I agree
WCW
with that.
title. Uh,
I agree with that,
yeah,
but they didn't present the matches, and to be fair, they couldn't, but that was why, like, I wanted a place like TNA to, really start to make that move, because it was like, all right, another wrestling company. There has to be other wrestling companies.
yeah.
So, um, and this pay-per-view showed it. And then I gotta talk about the match. Petey Williams versus AJ Styles for the X Division Championship. Need I say more?
You know, when it's funny. I bet you there is an indie worker on the indies that's done a Canadian Destroyer and doesn't know who Petey Williams is,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
sad.
terrible and sad.
It's sad. It's sad, but true.
Petey Williams is so good, so good.
and and also during this pay-per-view, they also renewed another rivalry that had been in the Asylum years, which was Triple X versus America's Most Wanted for the NWA Tag Team Championships.
How could you not? That they
Exactly.
worked so well together.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I mean,
and
this is prime Christopher Daniels.
yep. It's also primetime Elite Skipper. People forget how good he was in the ring. I mean, people knock him for his promos because he had, very high pitched voice, but I mean, his in ring work was next to none.
Brock Lesnar's got a high pitched voice too. It'll
I
be all
know,
right.
I know. That's why I don't really care about that kind of stuff. But they had an amazing matchup. It would lead to an even bigger matchup at their next pay per view that year, which was Turning Point, and they had the memorable cage match and everything like that. But this was on this pay per view, which thus capping off with the NWA title, the Monsters Ball, the X Division Championship, the X Division Gauntlet. This was a TNA pay-per-view, in my opinion. This is like, if I want to show people a good TNA side, this is it right here. This was when they couldn't do anything wrong, even though Jarrett was the champion.
Yeah. Well, and my thoughts on that too is that the only reason that Jarrett's heel run, where he was putting everybody over, but he was retaining the belt, right? Like he was doing the same thing Triple H had done before in Evolution, where you almost beat him, and this is the Ric Flair playbook, right?
Right.
The baby face comes in, he gets a nice run up to the pay per view, crowds behind him, he gets this close, and the heel somehow still escapes with the title. So the baby face still looks great, and then your heel keeps the championship. The problem is Jeff Jarrett's just not as good at doing that as Triple H, and we had just watched Triple H do it for like a year and a half. It's not to say he's bad at it; he's very good at it. But it just next to watching Triple H having just done it for forever, we really didn't want to see it again, especially in a not as good way. I didn't have an appreciation for it then like I do now.
Yeah, and there was also a couple of other things about this pay-per-view. They also had a fans voting, which was they voted in either Dusty Rhodes or Vince Russo to run TNA, basically. And Dusty Rhodes won and everything. And actually, Vince Russo was a face at this time. Yes, Vince Russo was kind of a face. I don't know who made that call, but it kind of worked in some ways. It kind of didn't. I don't really know, but yeah, that was another interesting thing. And then of course, you had Hall and Nash who were a part of the thing. They helped Jarrett. They screw over Jeff Hardy and everything like that. But then at the very end, the Macho Man Randy Savage comes out and stuff like that. And I loved it. I loved everything about this pay per view. This was To me, when you're planning a big time event to kick off your very first like pay-per-view to show everyone, okay, we've arrived, we're fixing to do the damn thing, basically. This was it. This is how you put on a good show, in my opinion. Everyone brought their A game.
Yeah. You mentioned the Dusty Rhodes thing. I remember they had made Dusty Rhodes like the booker or whatever on TV, and I remember they would do these segments, and instead of having an office, like he would be in like a pickup truck, like in the parking lot, sitting in the back of it, like eating some like ribs or some shit, and like somebody
Well,
would come up and be like, "I want a match with so and so," and he'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, have a match." Yeah, those
I
were some
loved
good
it.
segments.
I loved it when he made when he made a match on Wrestling. He's like, and then for the first time ever, it's gonna be Raw or I'm sorry, Jeff Jarrett versus the Alpha Male Monty Brown. I'm a busy man. I got to go. I love Dusty Rhodes, but this is
Yes.
TNA just had some great stuff, and like I said, this was the way you show everyone that hey, we've arrived and we're fixing to take this thing to the top. We know what happens to them eventually, but this was the good years of TNA.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. All right. My number two. I
Okay.
don't ever want to hear anybody that watches this fucking program or you tell me that I am not a fan of AEW because I have the first and possibly only AEW pay per view on either one of these lists. And I just realized how many of these have my top five matches in them, and that's probably not a coincidence. But as you know, this is my favorite AEW pay per view, AEW Revolution from this year, 2020. This is this is like the newest pay per view on this list by like 15 years. um, yeah, I mean, so I loved this pay per view. You know, the match that's on here that was in, uh, that was just that was huge to me, right? It, it's it's just it was such a good show. I mean, this was such a good show. Uh, I just I cannot talk about this enough. So well, let's start with what I didn't like about it. Okay, so you got
Let
Britt
me guess.
Baker, huh?
I said, let me guess what you didn't like on it. A
You
certain
might you,
tag match.
you might be surprised. You might be surprised. Let's talk
Okay.
about Britt Baker and Penelope Ford against Riho and Yuka Sakazaki. Not a fan, right?
That was on the buy-in.
What's that?
I thought that was on the buy-in.
Yeah, it was. It was. And then so we had uh, Dark Order. I've never really been in any of their stuff, but they were up against Kazarian and Scorpio Sky. So I did like that. Um, so let's see what else. Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara. Love this match.
Yep.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Um, Jake Hager and Dustin Rhodes was okay. I thought this was a really good. So this was actually the opener to the pay per view. The other two were dark matches. I
Yeah.
thought this was the best showing Jake Hager's had in AEW. These guys just had like a hoss fight. And if you want to hear a ton more about this event, uh, you can. We actually did a full review of it in season one of this show, so you can go and listen to us talk about it for an hour and a half. Um, as you will know, I did not like the Omega and Adam Page versus the Young Bucks. It's literally 30 minutes of them doing moves to each other, whatever. The stuff I really like, the MJF and Cody match. Um, the finish to that match, freaking amazing. I absolutely love it. Um, the match on here that I think stole the show, though, and we've talked about this several times, is the Pac versus Orange Cassidy.
Yeah.
Um, that match to me, I mean, you say what you want about Orange Cassidy, right? Jim Cornette freaking hates the dude. He calls him my little dog pockets. Uh, the thing that I was the most wrong about. when AEW came around and they brought in Orange Cassidy. I've been a huge fan of his from the Indies because I get what he's doing, and I was like, but casual audiences aren't going to get it at all. Fuck that. He is one of the top merchandise movers for AEW. He's incredibly over. Now, I do think that maybe they don't always use him the best way because with him you kind of he's got to continuously change up what he's doing, and if he doesn't, then he's going to get stale. But I think that they're doing an amazing work with him, and this was the way to do it. You put him in there with a mega heel like Pac, and then you've got this guy who takes himself way too seriously versus this guy who doesn't take anything seriously at all. And that was just, I mean, that was a stellar uh, just a stellar match to me. And then the main event was Moxley and Jericho.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that at length as well, that it was great. This is actually where Moxley won the championship. I'm not the biggest Moxley fan, but I know that the lead into this and what it meant for AEW to have two of the biggest WWE stars, Chris Jericho, one of the biggest WWE stars of all time, Moxley, one of the biggest WWE stars in the last 10 years. I mean, this, this was huge for them to have that as a main event, and I think that that really drew in a lot of like casuals.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, I knew that I wanted to put one of two uh, pay per views here, and you could probably that the other AEW one I considered was Double or Nothing. But when I sat down and looked at it, and we've done so much with this pay per view where we've analyzed it top to bottom, I just, it may be that it's the last pay per view that I recall watching where we still had crowds in wrestling, but the AEW audience just adds so much to these
Yeah.
events. And I loved it. And we're going to talk about making moments. There were so many moments in this pay per view. This is my number two.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And I like this too. I don't have any AEW on my top 5 just because I look at wrestling a little bit different now. So I kind of, went with the ones that I felt like when I was watching them and everything, other than the ECW pay-per-view, just because, like I said, I really like the way they did that.
Sure, yeah, your Cult of Cornette membership is in the mail.
He would not like me if I actually talked to him, because I would tell him, "Hey,
No,
man, I like anything
I don't
wrestling."
think Cornette would like me if I actually talked to him. He'd be like, "Why is this fucking Mark booking wrestling shows?"
He probably would.
All right, man. Here we are. This is it. So there's only two left. Is your number one and my number one? What do we got? And I have a guess, but what do we got?
You have a guess, eh?
I think it's gonna be undisputed.
Undisputed?
The undisputed match, Ring of Honor.
No, it's not, because as an event, I've never actually seen that full event.
Ah, okay. All right.
I've only seen the matchup.
All
It
right.
is it is not. Ring of Honor didn't make the top, and the only reason Ring of Honor didn't make it is because they haven't had a lot of pay-per-views.
Right.
Kind of thing. I mean, they've had a lot of special events and everything like that, but I haven't been able to watch a lot of Ring of Honors from front to back. So no, it's not. No, it's got to be one from my childhood. Actually, it's
Fair.
got to be my all-time favorite WCW pay-per-view. It is not Starrcade 1997. It is Starrcade 1996.
Mmm.
And the reason why is because, and I've said this before, but this one was the very first time that this ever happened. Okay. I remember my dad and me, I was at his apartment at the time, and he had just gotten pay per view and everything. And he had mentioned that he had gotten pay per view and everything. Now, back in the day, what people don't realize is WCW didn't necessarily have a Sunday Night Heat type program, but they did have a Sunday show on before the actual pay-per-view. But it wasn't it was not. It was like 2 hours before the pay per view, basically.
Yeah.
So we watched that, but then there was what they had was those infomercials, and they had a pay-per-view preview type show, and it was Mean Gene Oakland showing like what was going to happen basically all throughout the night. Well, we landed on one of those channels, flipping through the dials or something like that, and like I was just like, "Whoa, Dad, hold it right there. That's wrestling." And he was like, "Caleb, that's just a preview show." And then we start. He started watching it a little bit, and I was just like, "Ooh, I wonder if I could do this." And I was just like, "Dad, please, can we order this? Like, come on, let's order this. Like, I don't have work. I mean, I don't have work. I don't have school. I don't have school the next day. You're off of work. I think. I think he was off of work. I'm not sure, but I think he was. Like, please, can we order this?" And he was just like, "Hand me my wallet." And so he ordered the pay-per-view, and so I got to watch it. And I remember a couple of things about this watching it live. Now I've gone back and watched it, and the way that it opens up, Ultimo Dragon versus Dean Malenko, come on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the match I remember from this one,
Yeah.
and,
Medusa
which is
versus,
surprising
yeah.
because I'm a huge DDP fan.
Medusa versus Akira Hokuto. I mean, that was what it was, kind of thing. But it happened after Dean Malenko versus the Ultimo Dragon, and then an interview from Roddy Piper. Who the main event was Roddy Piper versus Hulk Hogan. And at the time, people can say what they want to about their age or whatnot, but at the time when that match was announced and it was the NWO basically versus Piper, everyone wanted to see that. Everyone wanted to see that main event. So I wanted to see it. My dad wanted to see it. It was a good story. But you also had Jushin Thunder Liger versus Rey Mysterio.
Yes.
Amazing. Just absolutely incredible. Jeff Jarrett is in a no disqualification match against Chris Benoit,
Yep.
actually. So, like, actually, when I was looking at it here on the network, it just says Jeff Jarrett in a no disqualification match, and I'm like, oh, well, then I know who he faced,
Right. Yeah.
kind of thing. Which was good at the time, because Benoit in anything was amazing, and
Yes.
that feels so weird to say. Um, this matchup I would have booked a little bit different coming up here, but I did like I don't know. I liked it somewhat, but it was the outsiders versus the faces of fear. Just because I like Ming.
Yeah.
Ming is a legit badass, and so was the Barbarian. But I would have like had the Steiner brothers or something in that versus the outsiders to give it a little bit more oomph in that, I guess. But it is what it was, or it is what it is, I guess, or what
They were
it
running
was.
out of shit to do with the outsiders.
Do what?
At this point, they were running out of shit to do with the outsiders.
Yeah, it kind of is true, which was really sad because there was a bunch more stuff you could have done with them. But then here we go. You probably love this next matchup as well. Eddie Guerrero versus DDP for the U.S. Championship. I mean, come on. Yeah,
Interestingly enough, I've never really loved this one. And I love both guys, but they've had other matches that were better than this. But for whatever reason, man, this one just never clicked with me. I'm not saying it was bad, but it's
yeah,
like in my head right now, if you were like Eddie Guerrero versus DDP, I'm just like just mind explosion. But this one didn't do that for me. It was
yeah,
still a good match, and when I was a kid at this point in time, I did not have the appreciation and respect for Eddie Guerrero yet that
yeah.
that I
Me
grew
too.
to have later.
Yeah, me too, and I agree with that. But the next matchup on this one is the show stealer, in my opinion. And it's very weird that I would say that about a Lex Luger matchup, but it's Lex Luger versus the Giant. All right.
It's
And
weird
the
that you would
thing
say it about a giant matchup too.
I know, but but let me explain why. It's not because they went out and had a knockdown, drag out technical classic or athletic contest, but it's what happens in the matchup that makes it, excuse me, that makes it such a good match because the ending to this, well, first off, Lex Luger goes to rack the giant and he actually picks up the giant. The crowd is going nuts at this point. They're just like, oh, like I'm even at home, just like, yes, get him. And I remember that feeling. And then Nick Patrick comes in and he actually screws Luger, thus making it like, okay, he is definitely NWO. Because there was still like questions whether or not he was really NWO or really not, and everything like that. And so he kicks Luger in the leg. Luger goes down, and I'm thinking, oh, great. Here comes the screw job and everything. And then Sting comes out through the crowd. He wasn't rappelling down from the rafters at this point, but he comes through the crowd and he walks in the ring and he just lays the bat down in the middle and he says something to Luger and Giant. Like he whispers something in their ear. And then he walks away. And then Luger grabs the bat, hits Giant with it. And I remember watching this and he hits it with it. I'm like, yes. And then the referee finally comes to the other referee who it started off as who they called Mark Curtis, who was like really scrawny and everything like that. But he was actually the first referee. Nick Patrick wasn't, but Nick Patrick tried to come in and do the screw job. But he finally comes to and he counts 1, 2, 3, and the crowd went absolutely nuts when Luger won. Say what you want to about Luger and everything. I know he might not be the best in the ring, but at one point, dude, Luger was huge during the Monday Night Wars. People don't give him his credit for his 97 and 96 run in WCW because he was huge. He got big, massive pops every time he came out. And when he would do the rack and everything like that, the torture rack. And so when he got that victory, it was a huge, huge reaction. It was amazing. I loved every single second of that. And then, of course, you had the main event, Roddy Piper versus Hogan. It was a good main event, I thought. I thought it was a really good main event. You know, experts might disagree or whatnot, but the crowd, but like Randy Anderson actually, you know, holding up Hogan's arm, and Hogan didn't even tap out. He actually did the thing where he goes limp and stuff like that. So he put it down for 1, put it down for 2, and then when it went down the third time, Randy Anderson hesitated because he was like, "It went down." Yes, 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 ring it, and like the crowd goes nuts and everything like that. Amazing way to cap off the pay per view, in my opinion. This is my favorite WCW pay per view of all time, and it's probably my number one outside of WWE for a number of reasons. One, I went back and watched it, and I still feel the same way I did about it, but really just a feeling I have with watching it as a child, being such a fan of wrestling and not caring, you know, what everyone cares about today. Oh, they need to book it this way. They need to do this. They need to do that. No, I didn't care about that shit as a child. You know, I watched it and I enjoyed it just sitting back and watching it. And then, of course, you know, the memories of sitting there watching it with my dad. You can't replace those kinds of things, you know? Like I love AEW. I do. I love AEW, I love MLW, I love NWA. But just those old 90s, man, nothing beats it.
I'm with you. I'm definitely with you. The pay per views back then felt different. Like
Yeah.
now, I think it got to the point. Back then there would be like 10 to 12 pay per views a year, and sometimes not even that often. And which is why I like that AEW now is doing like every 2 months, because WWE got to the point where there's a pay per view every 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and they don't mean anything anymore.
Nope.
You can't build a compelling angle to it. Um, so yeah, I mean, it just doesn't mean anything anymore, and I think it contributes heavily to why everything in WWE feels like filler now, because it's like, all right, we had the big event. All right, well, we got 3 weeks to build up the next one. So we don't have any time to acknowledge what happened last time. We just got to keep rolling with the punches and keep going. Um, so yeah, I agree, man, and that's an awesome pick for number one, and I would not have called that at all. You
Like,
made me want to go watch it after we get done.
dude, definitely do it because it's amazing, at least in my opinion. And like I said, a lot of it has to deal with just sentimental reasons.
Right.
Just I just remember that feeling as a child,
Yeah.
and getting to watch that pay per view finally. Like it was like, yes, I get to watch a live pay per view. And you had to wait. Like actually, the matches, like when you would watch the other matches, I didn't have the appreciation that I did, now for them, but it's like, you couldn't wait for that main event. It
Right.
didn't matter what it was. You could not wait for that main event.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Well, that means we've only got one left to talk about.
Yep.
And I thought that earlier, I thought that you might sweep this one out from under me, but you didn't. My number one is TNA Turning Point 2004. Um, the thing that made me think about this, I was watching through kind of the TNA pay per views I remembered the most, and I thought, how could I forget this one? And James Storm put out a tweet the other day. I don't know if you saw this or not, but he talked about the main event, and he said that the Six Sides of Steel, they actually didn't get a chance to get in the ring and actually work with it. It was never set up before they set it up during the show. They had set it up in like a warehouse on a six-sided ring, but they didn't get to the venue and actually have time to set it up so the tag teams could get in there and like get a feel for it and work in there. So this is, if you aren't familiar with this pay per view, go and watch it. It's absolutely amazing. This is the legendary Elix Skipper walk down the cage in the
Yep.
main event, and so he literally told them in the back that he was going to do it, and he had no ability to practice it whatsoever. They had never been in there. So they're like, "Are you sure you can do it?" He's like, "Yeah, I can do it." And they believed him. And he did it. And it's one of the most iconic moments in TNA, if not the most iconic moment in all of TNA, because this to me is when TNA established its own identity, and they basically said, yes, we have to use established WWE guys, but we are not afraid to be our own brand.
Mhm.
So I'll loop back around to it. We had Team Canada versus Three Live Crew, which is a TNA staple. It is what it
Yeah.
is. Um, they had Sonny Siaki, Hector Garza, and Sanjay Dutt. Whatever happened to Sanjay Dutt anyway? Uh, versus
He's working behind the scenes there.
he what?
He's working behind the scenes there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. Kid Cash, Michael Shane, and Frankie Kazarian, which it's crazy how far Frankie Kazarian has come up in the world.
Yeah.
Um, Monty Brown defeated Abyss. They had an interesting match. It was some sort of weird stipulation, like a Serengeti match or something like that.
I think so. Yeah.
Um, there was another tag match, I think, with Johnny Swinger in it, but we can skip over that. So interestingly, DDP versus Raven is on this show,
Yeah.
and huge mark for DDP. Now it was not as good as their Bowery death match in the cage in WCW like almost 10 years earlier, but it was still a great match, especially for two guys their age. And then now we get into the meat and potatoes of this pay per view. Petey Williams versus Chris Sabin for the X Division Championship. This is during
Oh
Petey
yeah.
Williams' very long reign as X Division champion, and I'll tell you the finish to this match, I absolutely loved it because basically uh, Williams goes for the Canadian Destroyer, which you sure as hell weren't going to kick out of back then.
Right.
Saban reverses it, goes for the cradle shock. Amazing move. Every worker on the damn Indies was using the cradle shock back then. Uh, and then Williams counters the cradle shock into the sharpshooter. And then of course, he gets out of that, and Scott Demore distracts the referee. Williams gets the brass knuckles, clocks him 1, 2, 3. It's a classic heel finish, but the way that they worked into it was just stellar. It was like, to me, it was like they basically took a very solid wrestling concept and they applied it to a stellar like athletic contest, and
Yeah.
I loved that. Um, then we had never could have saw this coming. AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, and fucking Randy Savage against Jarrett, Nash, and Hall. Which maybe not the best match ever, but it was still a great match. I mean, you had a bunch of guys that knew each other and knew how to work together, and they're all stars. You know,
Yeah.
this was huge for them. Such a star-studded pay-per-view. In a lot of ways, this is almost like a TNA versus WCW pay-per-view. It's like with a lot of these matchups. And then, of course, the main event, man. This is the moment. This is the match where I really fell in love truly with TNA, which was the Six Sides of Steel. It's Chris Harris and James Storm against Christopher Daniels and Elix Skipper. And if you have not seen this match, there's no words that I can say right now
Mm.
to to explain to you how good this match is. The walk down the cage may be the clip that they play, but the whole match is amazing.
Oh
It's
yeah. Oh
it
yeah.
it's amazing. It's insanely violent. Um, it's got everything. It's got the hard hits. It's got the violence. It's got the athleticism. It has the
It's got the
acrobatics.
emotion.
Yeah, it absolutely has the emotion and the storytelling because, as you said, a month before this feud had already been kicked off and been running for a little while,
Yeah.
and this was like the payoff basically, and they went out there and absolutely killed it. And honestly, if you had to sit down and list like the top TNA matches of all time, your list is bullshit if it doesn't have this match on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's amazing because the stipulation for that tag match is the losing team can never be a tag team anymore.
Yeah,
So and Triple X ends up losing, so meaning they could never be a tag team anymore. And it was actually one that they actually stuck to for a while.
yeah,
Like they tried to reform it in 2007 with like the three of them. It didn't work as well because they just didn't do anything with it. But yeah, like they actually split up as a tag team, did Triple X and AMW won that match, and it was amazing. I agree. But I had to go with Victory Road over that one.
I agree.
I do.
I could
Uh,
see why. I could see why. And the thing about that main event too is that is the reason there's a lockdown pay per view. Like that match caused them to do an entire show of cage matches, which
yeah,
take it or leave it. The first like lockdown was really good, but after
yeah,
that it was just like, do I really need 8 cage matches? And that kind of also led to WWE doing their bullshit where they have like, they stopped it now. Now they do like Hell in a Cell and there's like 2 cell matches. But at one point they
yeah.
were trying to do shit like, let's have a TLC pay per view and every match is a TLC match, and thankfully they stopped doing that. And it got old after a while. But yeah, I mean, this is, if you consider the Six Sides of Steel to be a legendary match, that match is why it's
Yes.
considered to be so. It put that
Yeah.
concept on the map.
Yes, I agree completely. I agree completely. It was that one, and it was also the other tag match that AMW had with the Natural Selection, I think is what they were called. No, the
The
Naturals.
Naturals, yeah,
Yes, the Naturals. That was in the Asylum years as well, when they
yep,
also had the six-sided ring in the Asylum for a little bit.
yep.
But this one though, yeah, this one's legendary. I agree. Just like I said, my personal preference as a pay-per-view as a whole was Victory Road 2004. So that's why I went with that one.
Yeah, they have very different feels to them. But
Yes.
we have accomplished our goal yet again. We have two completely unique lists.
Yes.
For a minute there, when you start at the beginning, you were like turning point, and I was like, no, but it was a different show. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah, man. That's our top five non WWE pay per views of all time. Um, if you somehow made it this far and still don't know this yet, I do want to reiterate the fact that we are now also available in audio form. So we're on Google Podcasts. We're still not on Apple Podcasts yet. We're getting there. It's in the works, folks. I'm just waiting on all the Apple red tape. Maybe they have watched the show or know me personally or something and know that I don't like them. Um, but Spotify, Anchor, Pocket Cast, we're pretty much everywhere. If you get your podcast somewhere and you want us over there, send us a message on Facebook, let us know, and I will start the process unless there's some kind of crazy barrier to getting us on there. Definitely check us out. So we're on all the major podcasting platforms. We're still right here on Facebook. We're still on YouTube, um, in video form, and we're going to continue to stay that way. I believe our next show that we've agreed to do is is uh, um, NXT's Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, it was either that one or was it top five WWE pay per
I,
views?
I don't want to do those back to back, so
Okay.
let's do Halloween Havoc, and
All right.
then we'll do the top five WWE pay per views, and then what we got to do after
Oh yeah,
that.
that's fine.
we,
I'm ready for it
we're
this
gonna go
time.
ahead and do it. We'll go ahead and knock it out before season 3 comes out and ruins everything for us all over again. We will do the Owen Hart episode of Dark Side of the Ring that we have been avoiding since mid season 1. So we've got all that coming up. Speaking of awesome things you can listen to in the car or just whenever, Caleb, why don't you tell them about your two awesome projects, one of which has your name stamped all over it.
Yes, you can check me out on the Stovall Wrestling Network where I talk about pro wrestling, obviously, and I give you some show suggestions basically as well. With this, we're going and we're talking about old wrestling, anywhere from old WWE to old WCW, ECW, NWA, TNA, MLW, Ring of Honor and whatnot. We cover it all basically. That's what it is. It's the Stovall Wrestling Network wherever you can get your podcast. And also, we have past episodes. We're on a little bit of a break right now, but Power Rangers Go podcast. If you're a fan of the Power Rangers or old nostalgia fan out there, go check that out. It's a lot of fun with me and the ace of the morphing grid, Mr. Quentin Ficklin, also known as Superhero Homie Q as well. But we're on a bit of a break right now. So if you're looking for new episodes right now, we're hopefully going to try and get together and get some new episodes for you as well. But we basically just cover everything Power Rangers. We go through every episode from start to finish, basically. And it's about 4 episodes every podcast. And it's a lot of fun. So check out both of those and whatnot. And also, come back here for an Evolve review.
Hey, I couldn't have said it better myself, and this has, in fact, been an Evolve review. We'll see you next time.